this developer's thoughts on the new MacBook Pro on today's Wednesday Morning Drive. Hey everybody, Matt Cribbs here, and welcome back to another Wednesday Morning Drive. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Halloween just got over. It's fall. It's a beautiful time of year. Hope you got some great candy for Halloween. Anyway, today I want to talk to you about the new MacBook Pro that just came out and my thoughts on that, because I am a developer in my full-time job. I manage a team of developers and I do coding on my own. I always have been. And I also, of course, make these videos. And as you know, as you may know, I use, even for the Windows games, the games that I play on Windows, I do all of my editing and thumbnail creation and video processing, all of that on Macs. I do all of my coding for my full-time job. It's not any more real than this. I just get paid more for it. But I do all of that work on Macs. And so, you know, I'm kind of, I assume, what would be the target market for the MacBook Pro line. Supposedly, the line, and I think you can pretty much tell where I'm going to be going with this. Supposedly and historically, the line that was catered and tailored to the needs of people using Macintosh laptops on a day-to-day basis, professionally, for pay, for their job. And, you know, I've been using Macs for years and years. I actually, one of my previous jobs, when I started, the development team was all on Windows, and we all switched the entire company development team over to the Macintosh platform. And there were a few reasons for that. Most of what we were doing, I mean, it was web development and being able to have virtual machines for Windows and all the different browser configurations that you wanted to test, plus the locally have the Mac OS browsers and that, so you could cross-platform test all on one machine on your laptop wherever you were, was a huge benefit. Also, the Unix underpinnings of Mac OS are a tremendous boon for the programmer. Unix is just, any developer who knows Unix and programs in it will tell you it is the best environment to program in. It is much, much better and just built for developing more than a Windows machine. And so Mac OS having that underneath just made it so much easier. And so it was a platform that companies we did a lot of work and a lot of convincing to people and spent money to convert everyone to using Macs. And, you know, the creatives in the team with Photoshop and even the motion designers and video designers video editors were using Macs to do their work. It was the platform that you used professionally. And yes, it was expensive, and yes, it had, you know, it was maybe not always the most powerful hardware you could get for your money, but the machines worked, they were solid, they were, you know, had everything you needed. And so that's what people used. And recently, at home, I had an iMac, and recently I converted and I built myself a Hackintosh. So I did that because Apple simply didn't offer a machine that I needed. They did not have any desktop machines. This was for my desktop. They did not make a machine that had the RAM and processor and video card requirements that met the requirements that I have. They didn't offer it. So I had to build my own. And I had to make a machine, and I made it for much, much less than a top-of-the-line Mac would cost, and frankly, it's much, much, much more powerful. Yes, it might not have all the bells and whistles. I haven't upgraded it to Sierra yet, because it might be a problem. Handoff probably doesn't work. I don't know. I don't use an iPhone. But, you know, it works, and it does what I need it to do. And I had to look away from Apple to get that. And now the new MacBook Pro has come out after a long, long, long time waiting. The MacBook Pro line had not received really significant updates in years. And I actually have my current work laptop. It has I dropped it, and the corner is all bent up. And the MagSafe connector it's all wonky where the power is. And I was gonna, wait until the new ones come out to see. And now I'm gonna go get it repaired because the new MacBook Pros are not the machine that developers need or want. Quite frankly, they're not. Apple has completely missed the boat on targeting what the MacBook Pro line had historically been for. I think it's an interesting machine. I think it's probably not a bad machine. If this was released as the phase out of the MacBook Air and the new MacBook, it'd be an amazing machine and probably an amazing success. But as a MacBook Pro, it's not. It's not a developer's machine. It is a consumer grade machine. So why do I say that? Why is it not something developers need? One, its specs are crap. It is way, way underpowered in processor and RAM. Things developers and graphic users need, designers need to run the software we run, to run many virtual machines with different browsers open at the same time. You need a ton of RAM. You need fast processors to do your coding. You need these things. And the specs on the new MacBook Pros are old. They're dated. They're not really anything you can't buy previously. They're not an upgrade. And yet they are way more expensive. So Apple has always been flirting that line of price versus performance, and you pay a premium for Apple products to get less performance but in a great package. And now it's so far apart that it's just, you can't, I would have a super hard time justifying the machine on its price based on what it can do. It just, they underpowered these machines. The second thing, and probably one of the hardest things for developers to swallow, is the keyboard. They went with this super low profile, squishy keyboard design hardware that the MacBook has. And while it may be sufficient to peck out a email or two, or maybe sufficient to, just enter in URLs in a web browser, it is a horrendous keyboard to try and type on when you are typing code all day long. Maybe designers won't have as much problem with it, but I can tell you every developer who's touched that keyboard is like, I cannot work on this. It is, my wife has one she actually has a MacBook, and there's no feel, there's no travel to the keys, there's no separation between the keys. We live on our keyboard. Our fingers are our interface from our brains to our canvas. That's how we work, and having keyboards is super important. And this keyboard just does not work. It is a gigantic step backwards. Third thing, and closely tied to the keyboard, is this touch bar. Or whatever they're calling it, the little touch screen on the top of the thing. Yes, they got rid of the function keys and the hardware keys, which developers use constantly. Debuggers always have their step stuff bound to the function keys. If you use VI, you use the escape key all the time, unless you bound it to caps lock like most of us have. But those physical keys are used all the time. And they're frequently used in scenarios where we're mucking about with software, where we might actually break the software control that controls what is being displayed on that smart bar. I mean, it is a screen. It is software driven. If you're debugging a program and you're trying to get something to work, this bar becomes useless to you if your program is still under development, because you can't use a function key or use anything in order to, it's not going to update if the software behind it isn't working properly. And, that's a huge problem for developers. We need the physical keys. We need the operating level interrupts to be able to do what we do with the keys. And I can't wait. And I haven't used it. I mean, maybe there's some cleverness and hacking going on, but I cannot, I know there will be a scenario when some piece of software is doing something with that screen and it goes wrong and it's not properly going to let go. I mean, Finder gets locked up by things. So kernels panic. You can mess up your OS. And there's going to be a scenario where if you had a physical key, you'd be able to recover. But with that software driven bar, you're going to be just reboot. I mean, you're done. Throw away everything you hadn't written to disk, and you're done. And I can't wait for the first time someone is in a browser with their volume all the way up and doesn't notice it and clicks on a YouTube video that starts playing and there's a little bit of lag and you can't just immediately mash that mute key, because that's going to be fun in an office environment. So yeah, that's that. It might be a clever piece of technology. It might be useful, but not at the expense of keys that are used all the time. That's the major problem I have. I also doubt how useful it will be because you don't look at the keyboard. Now there's a screen. We have a display screen of soft keys at an area of the computer that you never look at. So now you have to actually break eye contact with the work you are doing, look down, look away from your work to find something to press. You don't have, you can't feel the edges. You don't have any of the non-visual clues that you need to navigate when it's on a piece of your machine that is not the piece of your machine that you look at. So I do doubt whether that bar is actually a good design or not. No, I don't doubt it. It's a bad design. But maybe it's whatever. It is what it is. And finally, for the ports, there's what? On the big one, there's 4 USB-C ports, and that's it. Now, this one's a little more subtle. Yes, I believe USB-C, it will be awesome when everyone switches that. Having one port that everything runs on is going to be fantastic. And I applaud Apple for driving the way towards that future. I think that will come, and I think that should be the way they go on a lot of their laptop lines. But on your Pro line, and remember, the Pro line is historically the line that would be catering to the people doing active development, to those users, to the Pro users. You can't be ahead of the curve. I need plain old boring USB slots, and I'm going to for another couple years. I have hardware. I have an Arduino, one board that needs one particular cable. I can't put it through a dongle. I can't put it through a hub. I can't even use a different cable on it or the thing's not going to work. So for me, for that, this new computer will be worthless and I can't use it to interface with some of the stuff that I'm using. I need those legacy ports because it is a development environment. I make them all, put one, but just you can't get rid of them all when you're talking about a machine developers are going to be actually able to use. And it's not just about not liking to carry dongles. It's about actual real requirements of a need for these legacy ports. I do think having the SD slot when I take the laptop out in the field is just an amazing thing to have. Not to have, another card reader yet for there, just have it built in. Really going to miss that. But, hey, they're streamlining that. The difference between a consumer machine and a pro machine is having those little niceties, having, not having to carry yet another dongle, yet another adapter, a card reader with you to be able to read them when you need it. When your camera's battery is dead and you can't connect via Wi-Fi, but you can pop out the card and pop it in your machine, can't do that anymore. And these are the scenarios that real pro users face and have to deal with. And that's why Apple they missed the boat on targeting the pro users. So those are my big complaints with the machine. And, I think, I think it is very, very clear that Apple, you know, the MacBook Pro is no longer a machine for professional users. It is not a machine for the coder. It is not a machine for the designer. It's not what we need. And I've said Apple missed the boat on this, or they didn't do that. But the sad fact is, I don't think I don't think they missed it because they were trying to hit it. I think it's very obvious and very clear that Apple no longer wishes to target the pro user. They're not making a machine for the developers or the designers anymore. They are making the machines for the mass market. And so the pro branding is not really that historic target audience of what it was, is not the audience that Apple is really targeting. It's not apparently where they see the money being. So it's been a good run. And unless there's a shift in the company and they decide to get back into that market, I don't see Apple continuing as the machine that everyone has when they're doing their work. We'll move on to Linux. Maybe we'll move on to Windows. Microsoft is showing signs of getting it. We're getting some. I mean, there's Bash Shell now running in the Windows 10 environment. We'll see what happens. But I'm going to hold on to my current MacBook Pro for as long as I can, and until that thing, actually refuses to turn on, because I don't have any other machine that I can buy that's going to work for me. Anyway, hope that was interesting. You learned a little something. Let me know your opinions down in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you would like, shoot me a message, and perhaps I will invite you, shoot me a message on Twitter, and I'll invite you to my Discord chat, simply for the fact that you listened to this video all the way through. So I'll talk to you later. Have a great week. Bye.